You feel it, don't you? That deep, bone-level fatigue that seeps past muscle and mind into the marrow of your being. You've done everything the sacred texts, the modern teachers, the digital prophets ever told you to do. You've meditated until silence became its own kind of noise. You've written pages of affirmations that now sit like fading fossils of hope. You've visualized until your imagination grew tired of its own repetition. And yet, here you are, same walls, same ceiling, same morning light filtering through the same window. The world seems untouched by all your inner revolutions. It's as if your soul has been pressing its face against glass, watching another dimension shimmer just out of reach. You can feel it. You can almost see it. But the harder you press, the foggier the pain becomes. This is not failure. This is not punishment. This is the threshold. The moment when every muscle of your spiritual effort quivers in surrender, when the mind's grip loosens just enough for the unseen to breathe through the cracks. Imagine this fatigue not as depletion, but as signal, a quantum indicator that your old mode of seeing has reached its limit. The instrument is detuning itself before learning a new song. The exhaustion is the space between notes, where the next octave is waiting. And here, in this pause, something profound begins to stir. You are no longer asked to climb higher, run faster, or force clarity from confusion. You are being invited to stop, to breathe, to finally notice that what you've been chasing was never beyond reach. It was merely hidden behind the tension of your own gaze. Right now, this very moment, as you listen, your nervous system begins to relax its centuries-old vigilance. The fog on the glass starts to thin. You are standing at the edge where the old perception dissolves, and the new vision is born. This is the exhaustion before the dawn. And from that stillness, something begins to move, an understanding that the wall you pressed against was never built of matter, but of meaning. The moment your gaze softens, the universe begins to whisper its architecture, revealing that reality isn't a fixed landscape, but a living equation responding to how you look at it. Think about this. Your eyes don't show you the world. They show you patterns of light translated by your brain into something coherent enough to survive in. Every color, every motion, every solid surface you believe in is a collaboration between energy and expectation. In the deeper physics of consciousness, this collaboration is called collapse, out of infinite probabilities. One version stabilizes long enough to feel real. You do it automatically, without question, without pause. You wake, and the world loads around you familiar, predictable, coded to your personal software of beliefs. The street outside aligns itself with your memory of it. The faces you know appear exactly as you anticipate. This is not coincidence, it's calibration. The universe is your mirror, and your perception is the lens that decides which reflections become tangible. Now, imagine for a moment that you could adjust that lens. Imagine that perception itself is the most advanced form of technology, an instrument tuned by thought, emotion, and collective agreement. The moment you recognize this, the concept of the quantum veil begins to make sense. It isn't a mystical barrier out in space. It's the filter of your own programming. The first thread of this veil is the collective story, the shared mythology of humanity that says, this is real, that is fantasy. From birth, you inherit a map drawn by billions of minds before you, a lattice of consensus that tells you which frequencies to ignore. The second thread is biological. Your nervous system is built to prioritize what helps you survive, not what helps you expand. It edits out 99% of what's actually there. That shimmer in the corner of your vision, the flash you dismissed as nothing. Those are glimpses of the unfiltered field, the uncollapsed wave of possibility that your brain, loyal to safety, quietly discards. The third thread is the most intimate. It is woven from your memories, traumas, and private definitions of what is safe to see. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every inherited belief about what is possible becomes another strand in the weave. Over time, this tapestry grows so familiar that you forget it's a filter at all. And yet, beneath it all, the raw data of the cosmos continues to pulse an ocean of information, waiting for a new instruction from the observer. You. Some physicists whisper of this process through mathematics, but you, my friend, are living it through experience. When you stare at the static pattern of life and call it reality, the veil tightens its grip. But when curiosity replaces certainty, when you allow for even the smallest possibility that what you see might be incomplete, the threads loosen. This is not a matter of forcing perception. It is a matter of permission. The more you insist that things stay the same, the more rigid the projection becomes. The moment you entertain wonder, you invite a new version of the world to stabilize. Think again of the stereogram, the chaotic print that hides a three-dimensional image. At first glance, it's nonsense. The eyes dart, searching for logic in the pattern, but only when you stop searching, when you gaze through the chaos, does the hidden depth reveal itself. Reality functions the same way. The 3D world is the flat print. The hidden image, the higher dimension, emerges through a shift in how you converge your attention. The physics of perception are the physics of faith, a surrender that allows two separate images, what you've known and what could be, to fuse into depth. So here's the truth that slips through the cracks of language. The universe does not hide itself from you. It simply waits for you to adjust your vision. The quantum veil is not your enemy. It is your oldest teacher, gently insisting that you learn to see without fear. And as this understanding settles, something subtle begins to happen. The weight of effort lessens. You feel the hum of possibility beneath the static. The fog is not fighting you, it's training your eyes for light. As the fog thins, you notice something strange. Your instincts still whisper, try harder. Even in surrender, an echo of striving remains, like a muscle twitching after the body has fallen asleep. It's the oldest reflex in human evolution, the belief that more force equals more progress. But in this new terrain, effort has become the very gravity that holds you down. Consider this in the quantum model. The act of observing collapses infinite waves of possibility into one concrete outcome. Every time you look for proof that the new reality isn't here yet, you are selecting, again and again, the version of the world where it isn't. Your search becomes a command. Your striving becomes the signal that says, not yet. You may think of this as a cruel irony, but it's actually divine precision. The field is neutral, it mirrors, not judges. When you declare through thought or emotion that something is missing, the universe lovingly agrees. It hands you another day of almost another hour of waiting, another reflection of what you believe you lack. This is the secret mechanism beneath your exhaustion. Every affirmation spoken from tension carries the hidden subtext of absence. Every meditation performed with the intent to fix or achieve vibrates with the frequency of separation. You have been shouting into the infinite mirror, show me that it's not here yet. And the mirror, being perfect, complies. But notice what follows that realization. The moment you see that your effort has been reinforcing the wall, the pattern starts to shift. Awareness itself is the solvent. To see the paradox clearly is to begin dissolving it. The physicists describe this as the observer effect. Mystics call it the law of reflection. Both point to the same truth: the energy of your looking determines what becomes visible. The harder you look for the future, the more you anchor yourself in the past. You can feel this is in your body. Every moment of striving tightens the chest, narrows the gaze, contracts the field around you. The nervous system mistakes your longing for threat and rushes to protect you by reinforcing the familiar. You cannot access the miraculous while the body believes it's under siege. So what if, instead of searching for evidence of change, you simply stopped broadcasting urgency? What if the doorway was never locked, only held shut by the pressure of your push? Imagine a pond on a windless day. When you thrash your hands through the surface, the reflection fractures into chaos. Nothing true can be seen until the water stills. The same principle governs the quantum field. Clarity arrives when you stop disturbing the surface with your insistence. This is the sacred inversion of spiritual law. The more gently you gaze, the more reality reveals itself. Surrender is not the absence of power, it is power without distortion. Think of the caterpillar within the chrysalis. If it tried to do transformation, stretching its dissolving limbs, demanding wings, it would destroy the process. The alchemy occurs through stillness, through an unseen intelligence rearranging matter from the inside out. You are in that chrysalis now. Your striving mind is dissolving, protesting, flailing for old methods of control. But beneath the noise, something precise and exquisite is taking shape. The paradox of effort is that the moment you release it, creation rushes to fill the vacuum you leave behind. So pause here. Feel the space around your thoughts. Feel how your breath widens when you stop demanding answers. That widening is the universe leaning closer. That quiet hum you sense behind the silence is not absence, it's readiness. Your only task now is to stop instructing reality to delay itself. To let go of the command, not yet. To let the mirror show you what was always there. Then, almost imperceptibly, the rhythm changes. The tension that held your vision begins to uncoil. A new kind of awareness flickers, a receptive gaze that doesn't chase the light, but becomes it. That is where we go next. Then, almost imperceptibly, the rhythm changes. The pulse of striving fades, replaced by something quieter, an awareness that doesn't reach for the world but allows the world to reach for it. You feel the reversal begin. The hunter becomes the meadow, the seeker becomes the scene. This is the secret that every mystic has stumbled upon at the edge of exhaustion. Reality blooms not through pressure, but through permission. Receptive observation, a gaze that no longer grasps. To understand this, think of your eyes not as instruments of control, but as openings. When you stare hard at an object, the muscles around them tense, the pupils constrict, focus narrows. But when you relax your gaze, when you look through, rather than at the field, expands. You begin to perceive subtle layers, faint hues, shifting light you'd missed before. The physics of this are simple. A wider field of attention captures more data. Spiritually, the same rule applies. When your awareness stops contracting around what it wants, it begins to absorb what already is. This is the posture of reception, open, unhurried, attuned. It is not laziness. It is precision. In the old paradigm, you were taught that manifestation requires motion, that effort is proof of devotion. But in the deeper mechanics of consciousness, motion can be noise. The new reality is like a faint radio signal. The more static you create through trying, the less you hear. The station has always been broadcasting. You just had to quiet the interference. Receptive observation begins with a single shift, curiosity over control. Instead of declaring what should happen, you become interested in what is happening. You let each moment reveal its geometry before you decide what it means. You begin to trust the intelligence within unfolding itself, and something miraculous follows. The more you soften, the more cooperative the universe becomes. Circumstances rearrange themselves without your command. People appear at the right time. The right words slip from your mouth without rehearsal. The field starts to choreograph your life with an elegance that makes human planning look primitive. You may notice that you breathe differently here. The chest opens. The shoulders descend. Even your voice, when you speak, carries a slower rhythm, as if it has synced with a pulse older than time. That is coherence. It's what happens when your inner frequency stops arguing with what is. In that harmony, clarity doesn't need to be chased. It arrives like a tide returning to shore. The secret of receptive observation is that it collapses nothing by force. It simply allows the potential with the highest resonance to stabilize around your calm. You might ask, how do I know if I'm truly receiving? The answer is simple. Check your body. If your mind is buzzing, if your breath is shallow, you are still trying to create from tension. But if you feel spacious, even in uncertainty, you are already in the field. You are letting the quantum veil become transparent. The mind will resist this at first. It was trained to measure worth by effort. It will whisper that rest is regression, that surrender is weakness. But notice how those thoughts feel in your body, tight, heavy, contracting. Truth feels like expansion. Follow that. The great irony is that the universe never needed your struggle. It only needed your stillness to meet you halfway. When you stop straining, you create resonance. And resonance, not force, is the true engine of creation. So breathe. Let your gaze soften until the edges of the room blur. Imagine you're looking not at these words, but through them, to the silent intelligence writing them from the other side. That's where the shift happens in the space between perception and surrender. Now the same pattern reveals its opposite face. Doing dissolves into being, and being begins to create effortlessly. From this stillness, new signs will start to appear subtle, luminous, undeniable. From this stillness, new signs begin to appear, not grand fireworks of revelation, but quiet rearrangements that whisper through your ordinary days. The world doesn't split open, it breathes differently. What once felt solid starts to shimmer. What once seemed random begins to hum with purpose. At first, these changes seem small, almost trivial. A relationship that once defined you suddenly feels weightless. The career that once gave you identity loses its magnetic pull. The dreams that once kept you awake at night now rest easily in your hands, asking to be released. You might call it loss, but the field calls it reconfiguration. This is the first sign of the shift, the great unraveling. The scaffolding of your old self begins to dismantle itself. The structures that once gave you security now feel too narrow for the light you're carrying. It's not destruction, it's expansion pressure. The caterpillar's shell splitting, not in punishment, but in proof that it has outgrown its form. The second sign is subtler, the sensory distortions. Time begins to ripple. Some moments stretch like taffy, endless and deep. Others collapse into flashes of déjà vu. You notice faint tones in the air, crystalline rings in quiet rooms, a shimmer in the corner of your eye, a pulse in your fingertips when you stand in sunlight. Your nervous system is learning a new language, the body adapting to an expanded bandwidth of perception. And yes, sometimes it feels disorienting. The mind wants to classify it as fatigue, anxiety, even madness. But beneath that label is evolution. You are perceiving the infrastructure of reality before it congeals into form. It's not that the world has changed overnight. It's that you're finally seeing the gears turn beneath the clock face. Then comes the third sign, inspired in action. After years of striving, suddenly your motivation evaporates. The fire to push, to fix, to manifest it goes quiet. What arises instead is an unfamiliar peace, a magnetic pull toward rest, toward play, toward simply being. The conditioned mind panics. It says, "You're falling behind." But the soul smiles, knowing that this is the rewiring the nervous system detaching from the circuitry of struggle. You begin to notice that the universe moves more effectively when you don't interfere. Solutions arrive while you're walking, not working. Healing happens in laughter, not labor. Even silence starts to feel productive. You realize that doing nothing in alignment is far more potent than doing everything in resistance. These are not random symptoms. They are the coordinates of transition, the proof that the quantum veil is thinning. The unraveling clears the old architecture. The sensory distortions reveal the wider bandwidth. The inaction integrates the upgrade. Together, they form a pattern, a living geometry of awakening. Yet you may still doubt. You may wonder, if this is the shift, why does it sometimes hurt? Because transformation always moves through friction. The light doesn't destroy the darkness, it expands through it, asking the body to stretch in new ways. Each moment of disorientation is a recalibration, your biology tuning to the new frequency of coherence. Pause for a breath. Feel your pulse right now. It beats not just for survival, but for synchronization. Every cell is listening to a rhythm beyond the ears, a tempo set by consciousness itself. You are no longer chasing signs, you are the sign. And as this realization deepens, you'll notice that the signs themselves grow quieter. The universe doesn't need to shout once you start hearing its whisper. The coincidences, the glitches, the dissolving timelines, they were never proofs of something arriving. They were the training wheels of perception, teaching you how to ride balance without effort. Which brings us to the next frontier. The signs were not the destination, they were the invitation. The real work now is not to chase them, but to embody the state they point toward, to let the veil dissolve within the body itself, until awareness becomes experience. As the invitation settles in, your awareness begins to turn inward, not to escape the world, but to include it more fully. The signs you once watched from a distance are now sensations moving through your body. The veil is no longer a concept hanging in the air, it's a vibration woven into your cells, waiting to be softened by breath. Close your eyes for a moment, just long enough to notice that seeing does not require vision. Feel the slight tension around your brow, the subtle flicker of effort in the muscles that never quite stop searching. Let them rest. Allow your eyelids to lower like theater curtains before a scene change. Behind that gentle darkness, another kind of sight begins to glow. Bring your attention to your breath, not the heroic kind, the one you use to prove presence, but the effortless inhale that happens without your permission. Feel the cool air entering, the warmth leaving. Notice how the rhythm is ancient, older than language. This is the first law of the new reality. Nothing sacred needs to be forced. Now imagine that each breath carries a golden warmth, a solvent of peace. With every exhale, it spreads across the surface of your energy field, dissolving the fine static of effort that once buzzed between you and the world. You can almost hear it melting, a soft hiss, like morning frost surrendering to the sun. This is not imagination, it is instruction. The body is the interface through which perception becomes real. For years, you've used thought to shape reality, but thought is only half the circuitry. The other half is felt experience. When you allow your body to feel safety, your consciousness receives permission to expand. Bring that awareness now to your jaw. How many unspoken prayers live there? Let it unclench. To your shoulders, the altar where you've carried expectation. Let them fall, heavy and honest. To your spine, the column of light that translates infinite intelligence into form. Let it lengthen, effortless, unstrained. Each release widens the channel. Each relaxation lets more reality through. What you called the veil was never an obstruction. It was resistance embodied. And as it dissolves, perception stops being an idea and becomes a physical truth. You can sense it. The space around you thickens with presence. The air seems charged, alive, attentive. You are being seen as much as you are seeing. This is the essence of embodied dissolution, to allow the boundary between self and field to blur until observation becomes participation. You are no longer standing on one side of the glass trying to peer in. You are the transparency itself. In this state, words lose urgency. Time becomes elastic. The body hums with a frequency that feels like remembering. Every cell seems to whisper, "This is what we've been waiting for." Stay here for a moment. Let silence finish the sentence. Your mind can't. Feel how peace doesn't arrive. It reveals itself as what was always here, beneath the tension of trying. When you open your eyes again, the room may look the same, but it isn't. The edges are softer. The colors more alive. You're not looking at them anymore. You're looking through them. The veil has thinned because you've stopped pulling it tight. And yet, even now, another understanding begins to dawn. This state must be nurtured. The veil may dissolve, but the old world still knocks. The winds of habit will test your gaze. To live in this new clarity, you must learn to protect it not with defense, but with devotion. You must become the guardian of the gaze. From that final breath of stillness, something subtle arises: responsibility. Not the heavy kind that bends your shoulders, but the sacred kind that keeps the door open between worlds. The shift wasn't an event to celebrate once and forget. It was an initiation into stewardship. You have seen through the veil. Now you must learn how to keep it transparent. The ancients would have called this guardianship. In modern language, we might call it maintenance of perception. Either way, it begins with one principle: what you look at strengthens, but what you look through sets you free. Life will keep testing that truth. A bill arrives, the conversation turns tense. The world feels noisy again. Your first reflex will be to narrow your focus, to fix the problem as if clarity still comes from control. But the guardian in you knows another way. You soften instead. You breathe. You use what I call the look-through technique. It's deceptively simple. When challenge appears, pause before reacting. Let your body relax by 1 degree. Soften your eyes as if you were gazing beyond the object that disturbs you. Find a point just behind it: the wall, the sky, the infinite. Keep your gaze there for the span of a breath. As you do, remember the feeling you touched in the previous stillness, the calm that needed no proof. In that instant, the frequency of your perception changes. The problem doesn't vanish, but its density thins. You've stopped collapsing the wave into fear. You are holding the field open long enough for a higher pattern to stabilize. This is not denial, it is precision. You are refusing to reenact the old reflex of contraction. Every time you practice this, you strengthen new neural paths in the brain, teaching it that safety is the default state, not the exception. The world responds accordingly. Situations untangle. Words find gentler tone. The external reality reshapes itself around your relaxed gaze, because the quantum field always follows the path of least resistance, and you've become that path. Being a guardian doesn't mean living in constant meditation. It means choosing awareness over reaction, softness over speed. It's a lifestyle of micro-surrenders. You may still feel the pulse of the old tension, but now you meet it with curiosity. Each challenge becomes a doorway to practice seeing beyond form. Imagine yourself as a lens being cleaned by light. Every time you breathe through difficulty, Another layer of dust lifts away. The world shines clearer not because it changed, but because you did. This guardianship also involves honesty. Some days you'll forget. You'll get pulled back into noise, into scrolling thoughts and digital gravity. That's fine. Forgetting is part of the rhythm. The key is gentle return. The guardian never punishes, they remember. One conscious breath can reopen the portal. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your nervous system learns that peace is productive. You no longer need to defend your clarity. It defends itself through resonance. You become a still point in a spinning world, a calm eye in the hurricane of information. And as you live this way, you'll start noticing how perception influences others. People soften around you without knowing why. Rooms feel different when you enter. That's coherence spreading the silent transmission of one stabilized observer. Guarding the gaze is not about holding your eyes on the light. It's about holding your heart in transparency. The veil can reform only where resistance returns, and resistance cannot survive where gratitude lives. So carry this awareness lightly, like a flame cupped in your palms. You don't protect it by hiding from the wind, you protect it by dancing with it. The guardian walks among chaos untouched because they remember what is real. And as you walk, something deeper begins to bloom, the realization that maintaining peace is only half the art. The next mastery is cultivation, learning not to manage the outer world, but to curate the inner frequency that designs it. As this guardianship settles into your bones, you begin to notice another truth rising through the silence. You were never meant to manage reality. You were meant to tune it. The universe doesn't need your micromanagement. It needs your resonance. Curating your frequency means shifting your allegiance from circumstance to state. You stop rearranging the pieces of the outer puzzle and begin tending to the quiet music playing inside. Every emotion becomes a note, every thought a tone, every breath a subtle recalibration of your signal to the field. You can feel the difference instantly. When you obsess over details, the body tightens. When you return to harmony, everything flows. This is not superstition, it's feedback physics. The outer world is simply your resonance made visible. Here's how it works. Your frequency, the emotional atmosphere you maintain most consistently, is the broadcast your consciousness sends into the unified field. The field, impartial and loving, reflects that broadcast as experience. So when you project worry, you receive reasons to worry. When you radiate peace, life organizes around peace. The field isn't testing you, it's collaborating with you. In the old paradigm, you were told to manifest by managing details. Affirm this. Visualize that. Force emotion until it matches the picture. But that's like trying to paint an ocean one drop at a time. In the quantum paradigm, you learn to become the water itself. You cultivate an inner climate so coherent that reality rearranges to maintain it. So the new question becomes not, how can I fix the world, but what am I broadcasting right now? Notice the shift in power that creates. The old model demanded action. The new one asks awareness. Action will still happen, but it will arise from alignment, not anxiety. It will feel like music playing itself through you. Think of yourself as a gardener of frequencies. You don't force the bloom, you tend the soil. Peace is your water. Trust is your sunlight. Curiosity is your pollination. When your inner ecosystem thrives, external beauty is inevitable. You stop chasing synchronicities and start generating them. There will be days when your frequency dips, when you find yourself pulled into old gravitational fields of doubt or fear. That's normal. In those moments, do not fight the emotion, befriend it, feel it fully. Let it move through without resistance. Every feeling, even discomfort, is information about the harmony you're creating. Judging it interrupts the music. Listening refines it. You'll notice how quickly the world mirrors your calibration. The right call arrives when you stop worrying. The solution emerges the moment you breathe. People respond to the energy behind your words, not the words themselves. The field is responsive to tone, not grammar. This is what mystics meant by effortless manifestation. It isn't about wishful thinking, it's emotional engineering. You are designing your electromagnetic signature moment by moment. The heart becomes the tuning fork, the mind becomes the sculptor of attention. Together, they shape the vibration that matter must obey. And with practice, this becomes art. You wake each morning not asking life what it holds, but asking yourself what frequency you want to inhabit today. Gratitude, serenity, wonder, each one a palette for creation. You stop demanding that reality change before you can feel peace. You feel peace, and reality has no choice but to comply. In that realization, a strange ease begins to settle over everything. You start laughing at old fears, not because they're gone, but because they've lost authority. You've reversed the polarity of power. The external no longer dictates the internal. Now the field recognizes you as composer, not casualty. And from this elevated resonance, another teaching reveals itself, one that transforms even chaos into communion, the art of thanking the glitches. Then, almost without warning, the universe begins to speak in strange dialects again. Plans dissolve mid-stride, conversations misfire. Time folds in peculiar ways. It feels, for a moment, as if the calm you cultivated is fraying at its edges. But this is not regression, it is dialogue. The field is answering you in its native language. Glitch. A glitch is not a mistake, it is an adjustment, a pulse of feedback between what you are emitting and what you are ready to receive. Each distortion, each sudden detour, each flicker in the pattern is consciousness testing the elasticity of its new design. The question isn't, why is this happening, but what frequency in me is this refining? The old reflex would label such moments as failure, the meeting that cancels, the opportunity that slips away, the plan that unravels just as it was taking shape. But the guardian in you has learned to look through. You take a breath, soften your gaze, and whisper thank you, because now you understand every apparent error is data from the divine interface. Gratitude is not passive acceptance, it is quantum acknowledgement. When you thank the glitch, you are telling the universe, I recognize this as communication, not chaos. That recognition instantly alters the wave you are standing on. The field, which mirrors your consciousness, receives the signal of appreciation and reorganizes around coherence. This is neural alchemy. Each thank you rewires the circuitry of perception. The brain stops tagging anomaly as threat and begins cataloging it as evidence of expansion. Over time, the nervous system recalibrates to curiosity instead of fear. You start seeing patterns inside the noise, the elegant geometry behind what once felt like randomness. Think of a storm at sea. The untrained sailor curses the wind. The adept one adjusts the sail. Gratitude is that adjustment. It redirects momentum without resistance. Even grief, when met with thank you, becomes a current carrying you toward a deeper horizon. Begin small. The phone call that interrupts your meditation, thank you. The traffic jam that delays you, thank you. The unexpected silence from someone you love, thank you. Each time, feel how the body changes temperature, the heart softens, the breath deepens, the field brightens. You're turning friction into frequency. Sometimes the glitch will feel larger, a health scare, a lost opportunity, a sudden ending. In those moments, gratitude may seem impossible, but if you can't say thank you out loud, whisper it in meaning. Let the intention exist even beneath resistance. The field reads vibration, not vocabulary. And when you do manage that whisper, the magic begins. The so-called error reveals its instruction. The delay delivers alignment. The loss opens space for what could never coexist with the old. The glitch was never the collapse of order. It was the update installing. Over time, you realize that the universe has never stopped speaking. The mistakes were the Morse code of awakening, the flickering lights at the edge of perception guiding you home. Each anomaly you bless becomes a new anchor in the map of coherence. Now the same pattern reveals its opposite face again. Chaos turns to choreography. You no longer brace against uncertainty, you bow to it. Gratitude becomes your stabilizer, the gyroscope that keeps your frequency upright through turbulence. And then a deeper understanding dawns. Thanking the glitch isn't merely spiritual etiquette, it's creative participation. Every acknowledgement is a brushstroke painting reality in real time. You are co-authoring with the field, composing a symphony from static. So the next time the signal flickers, remember this: the distortion isn't breaking your connection. It is the connection, tuning itself to your evolving frequency. Smile at it, nod to it, whisper your thanks. You'll feel the hum of alignment return, smoother, clearer, stronger than before. And as this gratitude becomes second nature, a new horizon begins to rise. You sense it like dawn behind closed eyes, the realization that seeing and shaping have become one act. The observer has turned artist, and as gratitude stabilizes your vision, the horizon widens. You start to realize that the veil was never the final revelation. It was the canvas. Seeing through it was the first step. Painting with it is the next. You are no longer a spectator of miracles. You are the brush in the hand of creation itself. Up to now, you've been learning the language of the field: surrender, receptivity, coherence, gratitude. Each principle was a note in a larger composition, teaching you how to keep time with the rhythm of existence. But the purpose of harmony isn't silence, it's music. And now you are ready to play. Imagine the field as a boundless sea of color, every possible reality shimmering like pigments suspended in light. With every breath, your consciousness dips its brush into that sea. Every emotion, every thought, every word becomes a stroke upon the invisible canvas of possibility. The difference between dream and manifestation is no longer distance, it's technique. You paint with presence. You used to believe creation required intention, effort, strategy, but the quantum artist knows that clarity of being is the highest art form. When your internal state is aligned, your external reality automatically composes itself around that frequency. Your calm becomes architecture. Your joy becomes geometry. Your trust becomes texture. Think of the air around you now, not empty, but luminous. Each exhale ripples through it, reshaping probability itself. When you walk through a room with love in your heart, that room rearranges. When you speak from truth, the molecules in the air carry coherence like pollen, seeding peace into every ear that hears you. Creation, then, is not something you do. It's something you are. You've crossed the threshold from manipulating form to collaborating with formlessness. You've learned to step into the current and guide it with the tilt of your awareness. The artist doesn't force the river. They redirect it through grace. And here's the paradox that completes the circle: the more you create consciously, the less you need to control. True artistry is invisible. It leaves no fingerprints, only resonance. You'll notice that manifestation now feels like memory, as if the things you bring into being have always existed, waiting for you to notice them. You become fluent in silence, able to shape timelines through tone alone. You speak less, but when you do, Words land like seeds in fertile soil. People around you begin to mirror your steadiness without understanding why. You are transmitting coherence through presence. That's the signature of a quantum artist transformation without performance. This is what the mystics meant by effortless creation. Not passivity, but perfect participation. The universe doesn't need permission to move through you. It only needed your consent to stop resisting. Now that resistance is gone, the flow is constant. Life paints itself through your hands, your words, your eyes. And in that flow, you finally understand the secret of mastery. It was never about control or even vision. It was about alignment. When the observer dissolves into the observed, when seer and seen merge, what remains is art. You are no longer painting pictures of peace. You are peace, shaping form. You are no longer waiting for the world to reflect light. You are the light, discovering form. This realization doesn't inflate the ego, it erases it. The artist disappears into their creation, and creation sings their name back as echo. The field recognizes itself through you, so pause for a moment. Feel the brush in your hand, the breath, the awareness, the pulse beneath your skin. Everything you touch from this point forward becomes part of the mural of awakening. Every glance, every silence, every act of kindness adds pigment to the masterpiece already unfolding. The shift is no longer something you see, it's something you compose. Which brings us full circle. The exhaustion that once began this journey was never a symptom of failure. It was the weight of unused genius pressing to be born. Now the artist has awakened. The world waits not for your striving, but for your song. And now the brush slows. The field quiets. You stand before the masterpiece you didn't know you were painting, the luminous weave of everything you've ever felt, surrendered, or allowed to pass through. Notice the stillness that surrounds you. It is not emptiness, it is completion. The colors of your journey, fatigue, surrender, clarity, gratitude, have blended into one radiant hue, peace. This peace isn't fragile. It doesn't need defending. It simply is. You can sense it, the same awareness that once strained for signs is now the silence that sustains them. You've moved from the surface of perception into the heart of participation. You no longer look for evidence of the shift because you are the evidence. The mind may still ask questions, as minds do. What next? How do I hold this? But listen closely. The answer is already breathing through you. You don't hold it, it holds you. The universe is carrying you now, gently, like a tide returning home. So take one last slow inhale. Let it gather everything, the tension, the triumph, the tenderness of this entire transformation, and exhale it into the vastness. Feel the edges of your being blur into the space around you. There is no veil to dissolve anymore. No ladder left to climb, only the infinite canvas, endlessly painting and erasing itself in the rhythm of your breath. Remember this rhythm when the world grows loud again. Remember that peace is not a place you visit. It's the frequency you bring with you. Let it hum quietly behind your laughter, your work, your rest. Let it become the invisible gravity that shapes your days. And if ever you forget, simply pause, soften your gaze, and whisper the truth that began it all. I am the shift I see. The masterpiece continues.